Hi, I'm Mike Bellevue. I'm the black powder editor for Guns of the Old West magazine. And today we're going to be shooting a gun I call the Ultimate Remington. And this is a little fantasy gun that I made up back in 1990. And it's had quite a bit of press since then. So we'll talk about its features and then we'll ring some steel with it. Well, this is a gun that I call the Ultimate Remington. And it really has an emotional spot in my heart because I originally made this back around 1989. And at the time, I was mostly shooting flintlocks and cap and ball. And I wanted something that was more convenient to carry out in the field than a full-size Remington. Because, as you can see, for comparison purposes, this is a standard full-size Remington. It's got an 8-inch barrel, and it's great gun, but a pretty big, heavy gun. And what I was thinking at the time was something more like a kit gun, something that you could pack along when you're hiking or camping, be much more convenient to use. So I came up with the idea of cutting a Remington down to 5.5 inches. And I actually did my first article for Gun World on this particular gun. I had been writing for a small magazine called Muzzleloader. I'd done a few articles for them and made all of $60 a piece on the articles, and I thought I was ready for the big time. So I started to research the larger gun magazines to see where I ought to go. And if any of you are trying to get into the writing game, this is my advice to you. I looked for a niche that wasn't being covered because it's very hard to break in. And that niche was do-it-yourself gunsmithing on black powder type guns. Nobody was really writing about that. And I thought that was something that I could do. So I researched which magazines carried that sort of thing in the past, and Gun World looked like a likely candidate. So I picked up a Remington. I cut the barrel down to 5.5 inches. I took the web off of the loading lever, shortened up the loading lever, made a new latch, made a new front seat, crowned the barrel with a Brownell's tool, and wrote an article called the Remington Kit Gun and sent it into Gun World. And at the time, Jack Lewis was the publisher and owner of Gun World. And about 2 weeks after I sent it in, I got back the article with a rejection slip saying no thanks. And I was devastated because, my kids were in elementary school and I'd actually spent the money to buy the gun. I mean, back then nobody was donating guns or giving me a discount for guns because I was just breaking into the game. So I was out money that was, my wife thought was better spent putting shoes on the kids' feet. So I gave Jack Lewis a call and I said, hey, why'd you reject the article? And Jack was a crusty old retired Marine, and he said, well, Mike, you didn't have enough pictures. I said, really? I said, so if I shot more pictures, you'd buy the article? And he said, well, if the pictures are any good, I might. So I got to work, shot a bunch more pictures, sent it back in. Jack bought it. And he bought everything I wrote after that for 6 or 7 years until he retired. And then I wrote for a couple of his successors before moving on to Guns of the Old West. So this is really the piece that I kind of broke into the business with. So it really does mean something to me. Now at the time it had a cap and ball cylinder, and it still had the walnut grips in that first article. And back in those days, that was before SAS was a big deal and before single actions had kind of made their comeback. So there weren't a lot of aftermarket places to get grips. So I bought a block of poly ivory and made grips for this. And then in 1998, when I was talking to Ken Howell of now Howell's Old West Conversions, at the time was R&D, and Kenny was making a Colt conversion for me on an 1851 Navy. And he said, Mike, I've developed these cylinders to shoot 45 Colt out of a Remington. He said, you really ought to test that. And I said, oh, golly, Kenny, I'm really not that interested in it. He said, oh, come on, why don't you get one? So I did, and I loved it. And it became the last piece of the puzzle, and that's when I stopped calling it the Remington kit gun and called it the Ultimate Remington, because this is a gun that pretty much is as developed as it's going to get. Now, I'll be honest with you, I am no gunsmith. I'm not a professional gunsmith. If you look at the level of my work, it is not that good. I am a pure gun tinkerer. I get ideas, and I try to make those ideas reality. And what happens after that is professional gunsmiths quite often take that idea and refine it and start selling guns based on it. And that happened with this. Tom Selleck has a gun just like this, according to Kenny, except Tom's grips are real ivory, as opposed to the poly ivory on mine. And if you look at the movie Crossfire Trail, one of the bad guys, I believe it's Snake Marquez, is carrying a gun just like this on his belt. And you can see the grip and the hammer and a bit of the cylinder. You'll see it's that. So if you got Crossfire Trail, go through that and look for the scene when Tom Selleck kind of first goes into town and has his confrontations in the bar, and then the big gunfight where he shoots the bad guy with the 76 Winchester, and you'll see that there's a guy wearing this gun. He's wearing Tom's gun, which is just like this. So now you can get 5.5-inch barreled Remingtons made by Uberti. You can get them through Taylor's and Company. Just like you can get 5.5-inch barreled Ruger Old Armies, and those are somewhat inspired by this gun that's been out there since 1990 and has been in quite a few magazine articles. So we'll just show you. This has one of Kenny Howell's cartridge conversion cylinders, I told you. And as you may recall from our Remington carbine video, they come out just like this. And you remove the back and load them. Now this is based on an original 19th century design, but the 19th century versions were rim fires, and they had slots right here where you see these firing pins. But Kenny developed the center fire version to fire 45 Colt, and the reason it can fire 45 Colt, because actually these cylinders are a little too small to do that. The originals fired 44 Remingtons or 46 Remingtons that actually didn't take up as much room, or sometimes some companies will do 5-shot cylinders. Kenny actually angles these chambers. Now they're only angled 0.5 degrees. I mean, you could not even tell with the human eye, but it's enough to allow you to get 45 Colt shells in here, and it's enough of a change that Kenny patented it. So only R&D could make these cylinders with the angle chambers that could accommodate 6. So you'll see other cylinders like Kurst that don't get 645 Colt shells in. They'll get 5. And even some of Kenny's other cylinders, I'll show you in other videos, don't get 6 in. They get 5 because they're bored straight. And the patent for this was bought by Taylor's and Company. So Taylor's has the exclusive right to manufacture these, though I believe Kenny still makes quite a few of them for them. So you can get an R&D cylinder from Taylor's, and they go together just like this, and you can shoot 45 Colt in it, and that's what we're going to do right now. Now, this is a cap and ball gun converted to cartridges, but these cylinders are proofed at normal SAMI specs, and they'll handle smokeless ammo. Now, the guns are another matter. I usually don't like to shoot smokeless through these because the guns were made for black powder, and they're a little more delicate than the cylinders, but they'll handle Black Hills cowboy ammo or anything, but you wouldn't want to shoot a hot load in them. So let's load it up with some Black Hills, and we'll shoot that first. Alright, so this is pretty simple. You just load up the cylinder separate from the gun. And we'll just pop them in. And we're going to load 5 for safety. And where the pin is, I always leave the one after that as my empty, because this is a very old cylinder. Like I said, I bought this in 1998 from Kenny. They're some of the first ones made. Now, more recent ones have slots cut so you can see the rims, so you can see where your empty is, but these do not. So I always put it after the pin, and then it goes into the gun. As we showed you before, you just give it a little bit of a turn, slide the base pin in, close the latch, and right here is that pinhole. So I know that this chamber right here is my empty chamber. So now I can put the hammer on that and be perfectly safe. Alright, let's shoot it with smokeless. Well, now let's shoot it the way it was meant to be shot, with black powder. Well, that's my ultimate Remington. It's already provided me with 20 years of fun, and with any luck, it'll provide me with 20 more.